Hello everyone, my name is Zenitsu, and I'm back with another Digimon video. This time, it's going to be a little bit different of gameplay than what I've normally done on the channel. Most of the time, I do my gameplay digitally, or online via webcam, but I did end up getting a tripod to attempt to do some in-person locals gameplay. So the audio isn't necessarily the greatest because it's taken place in a store, so there's some busyness and other people going on. So by your suggestions, I'm just going to cut out the audio and commentate over the game set, and this is kind of the format that I'm looking to do going forward when it comes to just trying to get some more content up on the channel. So when it comes to the locals, this is a pretty interesting matchup. I am on AncientGarurumon, and my opponent is on Medusamon. So I'm testing out Ancient Garu. Not really much has changed with the deck since it kind of got its update in like BT 18. So I'm just testing it out to see how well it does against some of the newer decks, and my opponent is playing Medusamon because it's one of the new decks and it actually looks to be a pretty decent aggressive deck. So I'm going to go first in this match, and I'm going to start off with the classic turn 1 play of AncientGarurumon, Digivolve into Ukamon, choke my opponent to 1. My opponent's going to Digivolve in Raising, and he's going to choke me back to 1 by using a Fireball to draw 2 cards because there's nothing to delete. So I get to do my whole Uko play, raise out and search. So I'm going to be taking a level 5. I'm taking the BT7 Beowulf because this one can Evo for 1. It can potentially bounce the opponent's Digimon, so it gives me more control type game plan for whatever I plan on doing. So I'm just going to Evo into a Ukomon in the back, and I'm going to swing at security. I don't get the card draw off of the Koromon because it was deleted by Fireball, so a little unfortunate there. So I'm just going to hard play the Tamer and pass, and my opponent is going to swing with the Medusamon, use its ability to start digging. It's going to check his security, but before the security battle actually happens, he gets to use his ability to Digivolve mid-attack. So he's going to be Digivolving into the Medusamon, if I'm correct. Still got to learn a lot of the new cards, but the fact that it is a Tamer that's getting hit means that that Digivolution is safe because it would be doing combat after the Digivolution with whatever was in my security. So now he's just going to go up the stages, I believe, into a level 5 Digimon, and it is the Cybergermon choking me to 1, and its ability will allow him to put a card from my hand to the bottom of the security and then burn the top of the security. So I don't think I had a really good hand as far as options to kind of put in there. So I just put whatever I felt like. I think it was a level 5 Beowulf. So it's just what it is, and then he gets to gain a memory because his security was checked due to his inheritable to keep turn. So they're just debating about what they're going to do next, and they're just going to hard drop another Medusamon just to pass turn at 3 and use the memory a little bit efficiently. If I'm unable to get rid of the Medusamon, that could cause a potential problem, so I'm going to start my turn by doing the classic Ukamon play, move out, gain a memory, hatch a new egg to continue the aggression. I'm not going to swing just yet because I want to try to get some value off of the Ukamon and save its attack for potentially later. So I'm going to Digivolve into the Lobomon from, I believe, BT 18. And that's going to allow me to look at my security for a hybrid traded Digimon, add it to my hand, and then add 1 to my security and shuffle. So the recovery is pretty nice as far as mixing up what was in my security. I know what's in my security at this point, so I could assess what I want to do, but I get to use the ability to gain a memory off of the Tamer, so I could try to be a little bit more tempo efficient, and I'm going to use the Beowulfmon that I searched out off of the Ukamon to bounce the Digimon back to the hand. So this is already pretty decent of a play because now it lines up my Ancient pretty cleanly, so that way I can then bounce the level 5 back to the hand, essentially getting rid of both of the bodies off of the opponent's field and making it very hard for them to come back because they don't really have anything to work with, especially without anything in the raising area. area. So Ancient comes out. If Ancient's ever deleted, then I get to play a Tamer, but the fact that I did bounce something means I also get to burn a security, and because I burned a security with the Koro egg, I get to draw that way, so that I could use the Ukamon, assuming it doesn't get deleted the next turn, to be able to get even more aggressive value off of it. So as a AncientGarurumon player, I'm in a pretty good and commanding position, and unfortunately there's not really a whole lot that the Medusamon deck is able to do in this type of a position. It was a little bit unfortunate that they weren't able to go up into their higher stages to try to like push a little bit more aggression or do something, but they would have just been susceptible to being bounced by Ancient, which is why protection is really good, and instead they're just going to elect to just use the option. I have enough security where it's not 4 cost, it's a little bit more to delete my Digimon just to get rid of it, and as per what Ancient does, when he gets deleted, I get to grab a Tamer and Digimon from my trash, add it to my hand, and play a Tamer for free. So I'm going to set up the other memory setting Tamer. This is the really important one because it allows me to attack at the end of the turn, so I could do some really aggressive plays with some of my other Digimon. So I'm just going to make the same type of play, Digivolve up into Lobo. Lobo's going to let me search my security for a card, so I'm going to grab a Lobo from my security, recover, and shuffle. Keeping my security as high as possible, especially in this matchup particularly, is really important. So that way I could try to put their abilities not on full blast, because they do want me to be at lower security amounts. So the Lobo being tempo efficient with the Tamer is really good. I'm going to then use the option to grab back the Ancient and play out to Tamer. There's no real reason to play out the Ancient here, so just being able to get more Tamers out to be more aggressive is usually a better idea. Then I am going to swing, and then before I swing, I'm going to Digivolve into the Jet Sylphimon to then recover me another one, so I could try to maintain as much security as possible. I'm going to go into another Ancient and not pass turn because of the Hammer Spark, so keeping as much tempo is like super important to try to get as much value off of my cards as possible. I'm going to swing with the Ukamon, so that way I get the card draw when it checks the security, assuming it doesn't die by an option, and then this allows the Ancient's effect to trigger to then burn the opponent's security essentially, and it allows me to make even more aggressive plays because I set up the Tamer the previous turn from my opponent deleting the AncientGarurumon, so that allows me to make the attack at the end of the turn while the opponent has no security left. Pretty easy and clean victory from there. So the big thing with this type of a matchup is they have to be very careful about how they use their Digimon and try to flood the field a little bit, so that the way they could have some extra resilience against my abilities to bounce their Digimon, because Ancient Guru always wants to try to bounce the smallest thing, so them playing the Digimon was actually a pretty good idea in the long run, because of the fact that I don't really play that many other bounce effects outside of the BT7, so they unfortunately knew I had it, but if I have it, I have it. There's not really that much that they can do. They might not have known that I had the Ancient and was going to do that, so they were just hoping that I couldn't bounce their whole field and then left them with nothing. This is why cards like Scramble and Training are pretty important to try to keep you in the game as much as possible, and why their existence is like both a good thing and a bad thing. I think Scrambles are a little bit more healthier than Training cards, but Training cards also just help with the overall deck's consistency. So they weren't able to really do a whole lot just because of how fast I was able to move, trying to be as tempo efficient as possible with a lot of my cards. And that's kind of like the angle that I took, is you be aggressive with your Ukamons, you have a couple of good floodgates as some alternative rookies that you could sit on, and then you're just going to try to play a whole bunch of Tamers and just go hybrid swing, and try to close out the game that way while Ancient is slowly chipping away at their security when either player draws. So it has some really good synergy with a lot of what the red cards are going to be doing. So we're going to be going into game number 2 here. So after a quick little shuffle, and I don't necessarily think like this is the greatest matchup for Medusamon because of the way Medusamon plays. They really need to find those trainings and memory boosts to try to be super tempo efficient while finding all of their parts and pieces, and then try to launch a counter offensive to make it so that they can try to deal a lot of damage as quickly as possible. The only unfortunate thing is while they're setting up that type of field, I'm usually going to be setting up tamers or chipping at them. So it's a really awkward dynamic where they might not have enough damage versus me to be able to utilize that type of a gameplay to its utmost potential. So I'm going to start things off by digivolving into Ukamon. So the classic choke to one play, and then they're just going to digivolve in raising all the way up into a Flamedramon. This is the promo Flamedramon. This card has really good synergy with the deck because it can remove security mid-attack, which could trigger a lot of your abilities on top of raid. So I'm just going to be swinging with Ukamon into security. I do hit an Owen, so that's not necessarily the worst, but it's not the greatest. Them not being memory choked isn't necessarily super great for me, but I'm just going to respond in kind by playing my more expensive tamer just to be more memory efficient. So they're going to digivolve into their main level 5, and this is where they're going to start being aggressive, especially since I have a Digimon to delete. They could try to get even more value off of their cards. So they're going to swing into security, hit another tamer, so we're going to have a couple of pending abilities before the tamer actually ends up getting played. So he gets to digivolve by an effect into Medusamon. Then Medusamon gets to delete a Digimon and spawn a petrified token. So that's what's going to be going on here. They're just fishing out a token. We don't have any tokens for this, so it's just a face down card. And then the Owen is going to then delete the token to burn a security. And that was all before the check, and then the check happens and the tamer gets played. So that was pretty good at being able to control the fields. Now they just need to try to figure out a way to stabilize and make it so that I can't really do a whole lot. So they're just going to end up playing a Sunnarizumon, I believe by a card effect, so they could flood the field and be resistant towards my bounce abilities. So I'm just going to start going off here. I'm going to digivolve my tamer into a Kendo, and my Kendo will let me swing and gain the memory back, give him jamming because my opponent doesn't have any blockers, and then I also get to draw a card. So all really good stuff here. So we're going to take the damage, and then I get to do more things here. So I chose not to use the ability to digivolve mid-attack because I think because of the Owen, the memory doesn't really matter. I'm just using it to bounce the opponent's Digimon back into their hand, again, to put them to that 1 Digimon mark, so that way Ancient can close out and clean up their Digimon pretty easily and efficiently. So that's kind of what I did in game 1, and it kind of is going to work again in game 2. Now that they don't have anything on their fields, that's the only target, so it just gets bounced. The rest of the stack goes away, and he loses a security at the same time, and I'm just going to, that's going to pass the turn, because I already attacked and the evolution is a little bit more on the expensive side. Outside of warping, we don't really have that great of ways to cheese into Ancient. And again, having Ancient die against red decks isn't necessarily the worst thing in the world, because then I just reset everything and play out a tamer. So it's not that big of a deal, and they're going to clean it out again. So I'm going to see if there's a different hybrid that's worth taking, and I'm going to take the level 4 instead of the level 5. Maybe the level 5 is actually the play in hindsight, but just being able to be aggressive with my level 4s and having access at that warp isn't bad either. So I did have enough security where it was a 4-cost option, but that's kind of where memory fixers come in, is to make it so that our cards aren't deficient in a way. So that way I'm not choked, and then I get to try to aggress from here. My opponent only having 2 security is actually pretty dangerous. They're just lucky I didn't have any rookies to be able to digivolve in the raising. So I'm going to use the start of main ability of the Duo Tamer to tuck a card underneath. I don't necessarily think that mattered too much. It could, depending on the card that I'm using. But instead of digivolving on top of the Duo Tamer, because you want to save that ability to try to close out games with, I'm just going to be using the other memory setter to use the ability of Kendo this time to its utmost potential. So I get to swing, draw a card. When I draw a card, gain a memory, and he gains jamming, and then I can Digivolve by an effect. So that's allowing me to Digivolve into the Lobo that I just took, which then allows me to Digivolve into the Ancient. So this is all really powerful stuff. I'm doing this so that way I can keep turn because of the Hammer Spark giving me that extra memory, on top of the fact that his ability has not triggered yet. So if I find a way to be able to draw a card here, then I'm able to actually burn that security because the effect hasn't triggered yet, which is what I'm going to do with another Kendo. So Kendo allows me to swing. The Tamer allows my Kendo to swing. The swing allows me to draw a card. Then the Ancient triggers because it hasn't for the turn yet. And that's going to end up closing out the game because it burns their last security because of the Kendo's ability to let me draw and trigger the Ancient. And then Kendo is swinging for game. So pretty clean set there and pretty good set of games overall. So that's all I really have for this video. Feel free, if you like this type of content, to like and subscribe, and I hope to see you all in the next video.